the part that is always challenging.
Well, these things when they really happen, there's the core. We are really excited to have Pier here because it's been a long time we set this schedule this, but we're finally here. We having this opportunity to chat with Pier here, and I'm sure Pier is ready. He's got a lot of stuff for you guys that are joining. But before we start, how about if you can talk, just introduce yourself a little bit, what's your name is, maybe your profession. That would be great if we can have that information. And also, if we can also have the city where you're joining in from, that will be very, very great. So we have Abiodun okay here. Actually, I would like to also thank my colleagues. I have Nancy. Nancy is on the back end providing some support there. And then also I have two other guys. James Ashai is on my project team working on exploring the construction industry here in Canada with me. And then I have Dayo Ademo in Calgary. Nancy is joining, of course, from Halifax. So we have three guys across Canada actually. So which is the fun about our network here, the Supply Jobs Canada network, where we are helping foreign trained professionals who are looking to break into their profession here in Canada. So it's a lot of mentoring, networking, any opportunity that gets them to be able to connect with the industry and to successfully navigate the cultural landscape here in Canada. We're from all over the world. We have a lot of people from Nigeria, of course. We have a lot of people from India in our network. We have people from South America as well, actually. And we also have folks who are also from Asia. I mean, China, and then all the other countries over there. So without much ado, Pierre, I'm sure you'll be the first person to introduce yourself. I wouldn't be able to say everything you would like to say, so I would say, why don't you go ahead and let us know who you are, and I'm sure a lot of people are listening. They want to know about your story.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I always love these opportunities to share my story and perhaps share some ideas for people like myself looking to further their profession in Canada and match their skills. So my name is Pier Yipur. I am originally from Lima, Peru, South America. I came here, moved permanently here to Toronto in 2012. I have a background, my education is architecture. So I studied, have a bachelor's and a master's degree in architecture. And I practiced architecture for quite some time, a little, perhaps close to 15 years. Wow. And then back in 2014, I worked a couple of years here in architecture, and then I made the switch to work for a construction company where I currently am working right now, Ledcor Construction. So that is my quick introduction. We're going around the table, right, for everybody to introduce themselves briefly.
Yeah. So the way I think we have it here, I would have Nancy. Are you able to jump in? If you can provide a little bit of instruction as to what the participants would have to do for us, just so this runs smoothly.
Absolutely. I'm hoping everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear
okay.
you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Just a little, I would say, guidelines so as to how this would run so that we will ensure a smooth webinar, for the while that we are here. We would have a survey, at the end of the session, and I'm not in any order. I'm actually taking as it comes to me. So we would have a survey at the end of the session. The link would appear on the chat. So if you as a participant will do well, then be kind as to let us know, what the webinar has done for you in terms of the information it has brought your way, and how much light you have received, in terms of what you have learned from the webinar, as well as what you can implement. It will be good. And this is so that we can have feedback as to how we can improve for subsequent surveys. Yes, and then for subsequent webinars rather. And then also I would say that the question and answer session, if you do have a question as an attendee that you would like our special guest to answer for you, perhaps you can just during the while he's talking, I would say if you can just write it down in the chat, so that everyone can see it. He's also looking at his chat as well. And then when it's time for him to answer or give a response to your question, he will do so. It's just so that we can have some form of orderliness to this webinar. And then Abiodun had also mentioned that if you could be kind enough as an attendee to please let us know where you are you're dialing in from, where you're attending from, and what you do in terms of your professional career. It would also be helpful so that we can have, just a general feedback as to, those who have been able to join. Yes, I think that is all from my side.
Thank you, Nancy. I really appreciate that. Okay, so the other thing that I will add to that is there's a question and answer section actually. If you can put in there, because then we'll be able to track your questions. Though even if you put it in the chat, I'm sure we'll still be able to find it out. But for us to be able to be on top of the questions you are putting in there, I think a question and answer box will be the best place to put your questions. I think, yeah, so that's it, guys. I'll be looking forward to your questions just so we can make this very interactive and to really add value to you today. So Pier, there you have it. We can continue with the session.
Perfect. Let me get started then. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it.
Okay, yeah, you can see it.
Excellent. Okay, sorry. So I wanted to dive right into, a little bit of my story. Like I mentioned, I come from South America. I have a degree in architecture. And then I found myself knowing that we're moving to Canada. Here we are. I came with my family, my wife and children. And so I had some expectations myself, knowing, how diverse the Canadian culture is and also how diverse the market is that I was looking to insert myself into. So I had very big expectations. But I quickly realized I need to really understand the local practice of my profession. What does that mean? What regulations are there in place? What do I need to know in order to speak the same language as my possible and future employers and any opportunity that I may have? So what did actually end up happening? It took me a little while to study the different workplace environments, like understand the firms, where are they located? And not only where are they located, what do they do? And define really, where do I want to go? One thing that I definitely want to address is usually as immigrants here, and I'm really, I feel lucky and blessed at the same time to be here in a nation that it's so welcoming in so many ways. But at the same time, I think it is a good thing to have that defining moment of saying, what do I want to do? What are my expectations in terms of where do I want to drive my career? What do I want to do with my education? What do I like doing? One thing that I found early on is a lot of people, when they first come, and this is normal, tend to say, well, I'm just going to do whatever, and I'm going to work anywhere, even if it's a survival job, and that's fine. But at the same, like I always say, a job is a job, right? And you're contributing, you're gaining experience, but always keep in mind, job and career development is a progress, right? It's an evolution and it's constantly changing. So the way I see it, it's always good to also define, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? So getting a first job, to me, the key important parts there was being ready for that opportunity. That was really the key. There's a saying that says, when the opportunity hit, you're either ready or you're not. And if you're not ready, then the opportunity will just pass you, and you'll have to wait for the next available one. So that meant I had to put a lot of effort into my resume, my portfolio, tailoring my skills for the job that you're applying to. It's something that I had to learn a little bit of the hard way, meaning that I thought initially, well, I have a resume. I'm just going to start sending it. Any opening that I see, I'm just going to throw my resume and see what happens. And then I got a little, to be honest with you, frustrated at first because I didn't get as many responses or replies. So I think I did the math, and every 25 resumes I sent, I would get one email back. And to me, that was a terrible return. I thought, oh my, like I'm going to have to send like 2,000 resumes to at least line up some good interviews that I'm interested in. And then I realized, and I was lucky also, to ask good questions and have some support early on from settlement, for newcomer centers and places like that they mentored me in saying, well, the resume is a living document, really. So it's better for you to tailor that resume for every job that you're applying to, highlight what they want to see, and make sure that without changing the content, that you're really addressing the needs of that company. So some of the challenges that I had to also understand to overcome were, for sure, communication skills, verbally and written, making sure understanding workplace culture and etiquette. It sounds like a small thing, but if you think of it, it is important in the eyes of an interviewer. It is important in the eyes of a person that is going to be working with you day to day, that it's not about accents. I always say that, and it's very important that we understand that it's not about the accent. It's about not having roadblocks in the way that you express yourself. You can have it. Everybody has a different accent, and that is a beautiful thing in so many ways. But the language skills should never be an obstacle for you. Also, work a little bit on your interview skills. I used to practice a lot with peers, with friends that I found that I made at the newcomer centers. We will practice with each other and do this dry runs of interviews, and then finding support. Asking for help is always good. Finding mentors, friends that have already been through this, attending webinars like this one. I was so grateful to get the invite, because this is, to me, a great opportunity to share and learn from each other. And finally, and to close this quick introduction, understanding new opportunities in the workplace, right? And understanding that your skills are not outdated, are not irrelevant. Your skills and your experience are very much relevant, but many times you're going to have to guide them in the way that are more meaningful for the job market. What does that mean? For example, we're going to discuss Bim, which is mostly of what I do nowadays, and that was a bit of an adjustment for myself. As an architect, I worked a lot with software. I learned a lot of things like AutoCAD and Revit, but I quickly realized in my career I'm not too inclined into design. And maybe because I'm not very good at designing things, but also it wasn't really a passion of mine. What I found myself being very passionate about was how things are put together, the engineering behind a building and a construction. How are these systems working? How does this facade is put together, and how many materials are involved? All of that was really fascinating for me. And that's how I understood, and I thought to myself, I see a lot of this new technology, new software coming in place, and I can put myself and match my own experience with that in that work frame, and make sure that now this is a guiding set of tools for me to better use my previous experience, gain some new experience, and insert myself into the job place. So with that, it's also important to understand that North America and Canadian major cities are all very fast paced sometimes, and we need to learn that, and we need to learn to cope with that a little bit and understand it. So quickly, going about BIM for your industry. Again, like I mentioned, it was an interest of mine, and I had to understand a little more deeper what is it that I can do with BIM, that can transfer my current experience into the workplace. And I found like there's so many things, so many applications. There's architecture, there's civil, there's general construction like a GC, general contractor role. There's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. There's so many things. Structural design. So I thought this really presents a wide variety of fields that I can develop. So areas that I can apply my knowledge, building design and all the different aspects that that entails, infrastructure, construction, just to name a few. And here I'm going to put some ideas from my actual work. This is something I did on my first year working with Ledcor Construction. I found that estimating was a very traditional set of processes and methods in construction, meaning that even though it was done through computers, it was very much the same process done for 50 years. Basically, take a blueprint, measure the dimensions, and start estimating quantities for materials. Very straightforward. In reality, the computer is really helping you there. If you're doing it on a 2D plan, just to get the dimensions a little faster than you will do with a ruler. But other than that, it's the same process. So I was thinking to myself, well, what about bringing the 3D model into that environment and using the computer not just to do linear dimensions, but actually use it for volumetric calculations? And how about if we take in a few more steps further and we color code the different elements of that building? So you see right there a building, it's the same building left and right. And what I was able to do was calculate concrete volumes and also calculate areas for formwork. And then at the different segments of the building. So we were calculating foundations and beams and underground walls and slab edges and things like that. And so I reached out to the estimating department and I asked them about these things. And they told me, well, we're more than happy to listen and see what you can come up with. And then we started comparing some metrics. And I told them, how long does it take you for a building like this to do the process that you currently do right now? And they told me to get those quantities about, say, a week. I was able to put this together in one day. And after that, we compared the results and were exactly the same. If anything, I was able to be more accurate because, again, the model is just giving me the quantities directly from the computer once you learn how to use that software. Everybody was happy to see that, and a new opportunity in that company opened up for me. So I worked with the estimating department, and until today we were able to onboard, train, provide training for a lot of the younger and even some of the guys older than me in how to use it. And everybody was they couldn't have enough of this. So that to me was a clever way of taking something that I knew and apply it to a workplace environment that was looking for innovation and ideas. Some of the things that I thought were extremely valuable for myself was learning how to do clash detection, because this was something that will be meaningful and important working on a job site. I really like the work environment of a job site, and I'm pretty sure many of you will have that same experience as well, doing management, being on a job site, learning, to do this coordination. And one thing that I did, I mean, you see that side trailer right there, and then you see the meeting room, and then a couple of computer monitors on the wall there. And one thing that we were able to do was bring that same model onto the coordination process. Every week, or sometimes even every day, everybody on site will get together and start talking about how to plan better for the job, right? Oh, we need to install, you know, the concrete curbs on level 4, and we need to anticipate. So we're looking at blueprints or floor plans, at printed media. But there were some things that are a bit more complex. And then we were able to by putting them on a 3D model and orbiting around, then it really made a bit of a shift in the mentality of the people on site, to the point that they were requesting it more and more and say, oh, this really helps, because now we can highlight it in a different color, and we can see that, all the, whatever HVAC systems are going to be clashing where the concrete beams are poured on this level. So we need to lower them, but at the same time, we need to coordinate now with the interiors, because now, the drop ceilings are gonna go a little lower than the plans are showing. So that clash detection process is something that has been quickly adopted by many practices in both design, consulting, engineering, architecture, and construction. And it's a rapidly growing area of development, but very much wide open right now for individuals that want to learn and do this effectively. So a little bit about Letcore. I already covered a few things. To me, really, I mean, we can go into the definitions, right? And we can definitely cover that around the time of questions. But to me, really, the value of adding the three-dimensional models onto the coordination process was really the visual impact that it had. And even though it may look like something complex or sophisticated, is not really that hard. Like I thought, oftentimes we already have this information almost ready. We just need to organize it nicely, make sure that it's clean, that it's understandable, and then we can add more. So for example, on the left-hand side, you can see that you can load up construction cranes, and that radius of the crane, and how is that going to be reaching every side of that job site. And then on the right side, of similar exercise with quantities, but then put on a 3D model that any project manager can access. So instead of going through a binder of papers and plans, now you have, and a click of a button, even on your mobile phone, access to all of this information. And my experience has been that everybody that I've shared with, they cannot have enough of it. They want more and more, and it usually leads to better integration and a better opportunity to put all those skills that most oftentimes you already have. That's the thing that I always like to address. Like oftentimes when I share this, a lot of people, at settings like this, they come at the end and say, well, how do I do this? Like, I don't know, the software all that well. And I usually reply, well, but you know what we're talking about here, right? Like this is not, I mean, putting a crane on a job site is something that you've seen, that you know what it's for, so you know what we're trying to achieve. Now what you need to do is perhaps get some training on how to use the software, but then the software ends up being a communication tool for you to deliver a message. Same goes for the quantity estimation, same goes for clash detection. So it's really getting all that experience that you already have, putting it in a new format, and delivering it to your potential new employer, adding value while doing so. Here's a few more shots of what that clash detection process looks like, and a typical model highlighting different color-coded elements of mechanical and electrical and architectural and structural, brought to life through a 3D model. And it's really, once we see the industry embracing this, there's no going back in my experience. And this usually, if you can be the leading person bringing this as value to a company that hires you to get started with this, the number of opportunities that you're going to have are tremendous. And in reality, those opportunities don't necessarily need to be tied to the technical aspects. Once you're in, then you can define your career. Then you can go and start doing more diverse things. We in our BIM group had, different people coming with many different backgrounds: architects, civil engineers, project coordinators, estimators, and mechanical engineers, structural engineers, and a lot of them end up choosing their own path, but this was the vehicle to get them where they needed to be. And quickly, I wanted to share with you, I will go over this. Am I still sharing my screen? Can you still see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. This is what we call the Bim wheel and some of the applications. It's going to address during planning, which is basically pre-construction. What you really are talking about are logistics. Where are things located? Where is the site fence and hoarding? Where is the crane going to be located? And sometimes are simple graphics like this that are going to really give you and put you in a whole different perspective and really enhance the coordination process. We spoke a little bit about cranes and how to locate them. Working with schedules, if that's something that you are interested in. That was something completely new to me. I'm gonna tell you. But taking that model and then attaching it in what is known to be a 4D simulation was extremely useful for me as well. Simulating the work environment, so closely working with the with the scheduler, and then taking that same model and learning how to attach the project schedule to it, so we can then show the simulation of what the construction will be. It's a very valuable tool. So you see some of the excavation going, then the crane gets put in place, and then you start seeing the structure coming up. Again, I always say, I'm going to repeat the same thing I said a few minutes ago, but most of you already know what this is about. In reality, you're just learning a few new skills that can really deliver and give you a whole new bunch of opportunities. Estimating, we cover a little bit of that. I want to say how powerful it is to have a summary one-page screen that has all of this data loaded in. You can take this to meetings and you can share it with stakeholders internally, externally, and there's a lot of value into this. Coordination, we spoke a little bit about clash detection, but again, same process that you can run during pre-planning all the way to construction, and very valuable. There you see a rooftop construction with a window washing crane that needed some very unique dimensions there, and that we were able to meet that and coordinate that with 3D models, and the result was remarkable. We saved time, make it more efficient. Some of that, all happening on site. And like I said, once the site staff gets embedded and working with this, they're not going to want to go back to traditional methods. And then during building, there's a lot of new developments such as 360 cameras, laser scanning, if you want to learn how to do some of that, implementing scanning of existing facilities and then overlaying new mechanical or new construction is also very, very valuable and very interesting field. Surveying, virtual reality is something that's relatively new but rapidly growing as well. If that's an interest of yours, being able to take the model that you're using for coordination and putting in one of these devices, like a headset for virtual reality or augmented reality, bringing a lot more of that new technology onto the coordination process. Very, very valuable. And sorry about that. I don't know if that sound comes really strong, but basically, using virtual reality, this video, they're speaking a little bit about that experience of wearing the headsets for the coordination process, and then bringing that to site, having the people that needed to do the sign off on the design go over that experience themselves, and then being able to validate and sign off on all the required changes, expediting the design resolution process. Very, very, very valuable as well. So that's what I wanted to share with you about myself, a little bit of my journey, what I do currently, what I've done to get to where I am. Has been really a lot about embracing change, embracing the evolution of our industry, and adapting while doing something that is something that I'm passionate about. So I know we can perhaps go over some questions. I don't know if Abiodun, would you like to go over some of the questions that I had already,
Sure.
or perhaps open up? Yeah.
Go, yeah, sure. We do have some questions for you. We do have some questions prepared from
Excellent.
some of my colleagues, and who are very curious about what is going on here. And of course, those who are in this session, I will really be grateful if you can ask questions. You have a question and answer box there, actually, where you could put in your question. This will help us to make it more interactive so that we can gain more insight from Pier here. So I think the one question I would like to ask at this point in time, because I like the small talks to start with. I really like to learn about the culture in Lima. Anything that just say I found myself somewhere in Lima. What do I need to visit? What is the culture about? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely. And you're right. I love speaking about, culture, and it really brings so much. And that's one of the things I appreciate so much about Canada in general, is how much we can embrace each other through our, differences and similarities. One thing that I found coming from South America myself, I had so many new experiences with people from nationalities that I had never interacted with before, right? So I found people from the Middle East, people from Africa, people from Asia, from Europe, all over the place, really. And to me, it was amazing. But you know what was really interesting? The Where I come from, the culture is um, it really focuses a lot on family values, being a very close knitted community, meaning that almost sometimes no boundaries and no filters, but that's how we roll. And a lot about food. South Americans, like many other places, are foodies, and a lot is happening around the table. And I found that a lot of my friends that I've come to know here in Canada, from the Middle East, from Africa, are very much similar in that sense. Very much open communication, no filters, around a potluck type of setting and sharing. So that's something that I really enjoy.
Interesting. So I'm still on the food, what is one food you call a specialty food
If you like seafood, which I really like, there's one dish that I really enjoy called ceviche. And I know a lot of South American countries have their own version, but of
Okay.
course, I'm going to tell you the Peruvian one is the is the most tasty.
All
Uh,
right.
so that's one I really, if you have an opportunity and if you like seafood, to try ceviche, it's
Ceviche.
phenomenal. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, ceviche. I got that one there. So, I mean, of course, you talked a little bit about your story. It's just that I didn't get to hear the emotions, when you were talking about it. I know that, as an immigrant, when we're going through these journeys, there's a lot of emotions as we go through it,
Of course.
the disappointments and nervousness, going to
Yeah.
interviews and all this. I'm just thinking, like you were featured recently on the Talent Fits here by the Canadian Construction Association.
Yes.
Actually, that's what actually
We
knew
connected
about you for the
over
first.
that. Yes.
And I thought maybe you could share with us what were those moments like. I mean, you talked about this mall where you worked on. That was a very project I think you worked on as a beam construction manager.
Yep.
What was that moment for you like? I mean, can you share that with us?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and I really like that you touched a little bit on the emotions of this journey, right? Because it is a journey, and there are many emotions at stake and involved in defining what you want to do. I remember very, very fondly a little bit of, and it was a learning experience to learn the North American workplace culture. That sometimes to me, I thought it was very cold and distant, but and so I felt a little bad about it sometimes because I mean, for me, it was a little difficult to try and do, for example, try to reach out inadvertently, right? Or cold calling to me was it's something that I struggled with, and so it was a little hard for me to send emails and not getting any responses back. I thought that was, oh man, that's so harsh. And sometimes I even had one gentleman from a very respected firm actually send me a very nasty email
Oh, really?
because I mean I understood now working in the same field, people are overworked and stressed out, and I was not really pushy, but I perhaps a little persistent. And this person replied to me saying, this is annoying, why are you reaching out like this? We don't have any openings. We already told you. And so, I chose at that moment, I'm not going to let this define my experience here, because a
Mm.
lot of people are going to be like that, and everybody can have a bad day, right? And it's not personal. So I decided let's bring that back, and um, really learn from this experience, and not to be too pushy, but at the same time understand that a lot of that rejection is not personal. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not trying to harm you. They're just overworked, busy, and that's how sometimes workplace culture is. Speaking about what you mentioned about the Talent Fits Here campaign, I was really shocked to even be nominated for that. To be honest with you,
No.
humbled and shocked. And yeah, to me, you know, I always love remembering where I came from. My dad used to tell me, the person that forgot where he came from never will know where he's going.
Mm.
And that's a guiding principle for my life. And so I spoke a little bit on that campaign. It's live on YouTube. If you search my name on YouTube, you'll probably find that short, 1 minute clip. And I
Mm.
speak a little bit about my experience and how did it feel for me being physically present on the very first project that I had worked using a lot of the tools that I already showed you, and how rewarding that experience was, right? And I try to keep that dear to my heart, and also as a living proof, that it is possible, that you can follow your dreams. And maybe the journey is a little rocky at first, but we can all do it. And if I could, you can do it too.
Yeah, thanks so much for the encouragement because, I help a lot of foreign trained professionals and I tell you what, they go through a lot. And you know, sometimes when you go through those journeys and then you arrive, kind of, I wouldn't say arrived, as in arrived. You know, it's kind of funny to you, you know, when you have a flashback on those moments. But when you're actually going through it, it's really a very emotional, you know,
Absolutely.
experience. And I've seen some people who actually they personalized that emotion. Like it became a thing where the rejection, it was as if it was them that was rejected, not their offer, you know, to work for the
Correct.
company. And really, that's where it is very dangerous because
I agree.
people never recovered from it. And that's just unfortunate. So it's really great to learn that even though the people that we're looking at are up there, you know, that have really achieved these things we're also targeting, they've
Yeah.
gone through all of these things as well themselves. But we're grateful for those people who remember where they're coming from. They know that, you know, they have also gone through these things and they're always making themselves available to mentor others who are still kind of
Absolutely.
on that path. So really
Absolutely.
appreciate your comment on regarding that. Maybe at this time, let me see if I can pick one question from the question
Absolutely.
box here. I see one from an anonymous attendee. Does the Beam software have capacity to identify all the materials required per project? Does it feed directly into a complete BOM for a project? So two
Yeah.
questions there.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. More on the technical side, but the short answer is yes. BIM has that capability. Now, it all depends what the originating model and the level of detail of that model. So I always like to remind everybody, the data you're getting as a result is only a result from the originating data that you got in the first place. Meaning that if you have a well executed model with all of those requirements preloaded, you will be able to do many wonderful things like a complete bill of materials. You can do all sorts of things, you know, not just the color coding, but you can actually put it in the format that you want and work closely with the estimating department. But it requires, again, to have a neatly organized, well executed model in the first place.
Nice. So I think there was another question. There were two questions there. Let me see. The second one says, does it feed directly into a complete BOM for a project?
Yeah, it does. And so if we go to the premise of saying, you know, you have a complete model, you have identified all the different areas, categories, divisions that you're going to be quoting and listing. The beauty of BIM is that that model has a bidirectional connection with the bill of materials that you're taking, meaning that you make a small adjustment in the model and that will automatically update your schedule and material lists. So that
Oh,
is, it's really powerful, and that's something that,
cool.
you know, you take good advantage of for sure.
That's really cool. Yeah. Okay. So I think we still have some other questions here. Uh, how can the use of BIM enhance the process of sustainable development by improving building performance across all metrics such as energy savings, water efficiency, CO2 emissions reductions, and the overall interior quality?
What a good question. Yeah, no, it's you know, you really touch a topic that is very, very new, very, very much in its infancy, but there are major leaps forward in the industry with the BIM software and how much you can estimate and simulate from that sense. So to give you an example of something perhaps you can research, you know, there's a lot of talk about the Internet of Things, or IoTs, right? Meaning basically putting sensors during the construction process, but also during facility management times, that are basically measuring the metrics of your building. How efficient is your curtain wall system? How much is, containing all the different mechanical elements, so you have a more efficient HVAC, and then energy reduction, CO2 emissions reductions, things like that. This is something that is very quickly being developed, but again, very much in its infancy. So to answer your question, yes, but it's not there yet. However, it's being very, very quickly developed. So if you have a passion for that, I would definitely encourage you to start researching those topics. And perhaps you can be one of the leading professionals starting that process, right, in workplaces here in Canada. And that would be amazing.
It's always great to be the first, eh?
Yes, all the time.
Yeah, so that's actually an area where I'm also actually interested as a supply chain professional, because we have a role to play in that as well, in terms of the type of materials that we purchase, and even the type of design, say pretty much the kind of construction methodology, right, that we actually implement, or the construction delivery, project delivery methods. So that's actually an area where I'm also very interested. So you talked a little bit about facilities, and I'm thinking maybe I should ask you a question about facilities. So there's a question I have here regarding facility. Just a second here. Okay, maybe before we get to that, I have one quick one regarding the design, build, project delivery methods. So in what way has a BIM technology impacted the traditional design, build, project delivery methods in the construction industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so understanding design build versus design bid build, which is usually what we mostly do in Canada. We do both, but more design bid build. Basically, a designer or teams of consultants put together the design. Then there's a bidding process for a number of general contractor trying to gain the job, and then finally a build process where you actually, whoever is satisfactory with their bid wins the job and then builds it. How BIM factors in, it really affects every single step of that process, amazingly enough. If you have a BIM department or a BIM savvy technician like ourselves, like myself, embedded into the construction and the integrated project delivery, what my role has been, for example, from my own experience in that, is early on during schematic design phases, reaching out to consultant teams and ensuring that we can develop a BIM execution plan, meaning that I understand what they're delivering, and I also coordinated with them so that when I take ownership of those documents and those models, they have been built with the mindset of estimating, simulating, coordinating. So it's not just a pretty picture, but it's also value added to it. Then you take those documents. So that's, first steps into that design part. During bidding, all that you do with estimating will come to assist that process. So everything that we can do during assisting the estimating department, getting the quantities, I like to call them the big ticket items, right? What's really going to drive the cost is usually the structure, the excavation, and the envelope. Like those are the big numbers into I mean, many more for sure, but those, if you really get good quotes and a good budget on those big numbers there, especially if you're doing, for example, a high-rise tower, where the curtain wall system alone may end up being 30, 40, 50 million dollars, who knows. And if you get a very competitive budget for that, chances are you are going to end up winning that bid. And then during build, everything about clash detection, being able to then take all of that information progressively and deploying it on site, bringing that level of expertise through you onto the job site, giving training to other people, being yourself there, physically executing a lot of those clash detection reports. And so we're running all of those visual recognitions and also putting it in a report, uh, in an Excel sheet saying, okay, we found this many clashes, and then start the coordination process and say who needs to resolve what. Making, way before we even break ground, we already have a list of things to do for all the consultants to enhance the coordination process. That's a great question.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Yeah, even though I'm not really so technical into those things you're talking about, I mean, these are some of the things we deal with when it comes to
For sure.
contract management.
You bet.
Because what has happened for the most part in the traditional construction methods is you have a solution where you have an architect who actually designed these things, and then you have a builder that is now struggling, it's having issues, down the
Yeah.
line. And the type of contracts that we put in place for construction industry, we use the fixed price model for the most
Mhm.
part.
Yeah.
So when this problem starts coming up later down the road, then it becomes change orders, and then
Eh,
before you know it,
that's
you have a
that's what you
lot of
want to avoid.
problems.
Yes, because then at the end it's going to be a lawsuit.
Exactly, and you have a lot of loss. But with Beam, it presents an opportunity where all these clash detections are proactively managed, even at the beginning stage, like at the
Correct. Yeah.
simulation stage and all that you mentioned
All
earlier.
of that. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
that's great. I mean, that's a lot of value, right?
Yeah.
Because what I think some people feel about, like Beam is like this is another fancy tech.
Hmm.
You need to have some kind of business case for some of these people to adopt Beam. So what
Yeah.
do you think those business cases are aside from what I've just
Yeah.
mentioned?
That's a great question. And believe it or not, that's the one of the main questions I get asked, especially when a new team reaches out to do BIM development for their job. The first and the question that I guess get asked the most of the time is, well, what value does this bring to me? We've been building buildings for 200 years, and the senior superintendent will tell you, I have 35 years of experience. You're telling me that a computer now is going to do this? And the answer is no, no, we're not. We're not going to replace anybody. Your experience is valuable. We need you here. But what we are doing is we're taking all of this processing power and putting it with your experience to make this process go smoother. So the question I get asked all the time is, how much is this going to cost and how much money are we going to save? And my answer is always, you need to think it from a different angle. You have to think in terms of value. So don't think of this as an additional cost, but think about one conflict that you get able to solve. I'll give you an example. I was working on a high-rise tower, 35 stories, and the formwork for the elevator shaft was all concrete, had or some areas that were not meeting the minimum dimensions. What happens is the elevator manufacturer is going to fabricate steel beams to hang their elevator inside that shaft. And those are fabricated to a very specific dimension, sometimes down to the quarter of an inch or down to the few millimeters of tolerance. And if you don't have those critical dimensions, you need to remediate that concrete, make sure that it is ready. Because if those elevator consultants start fabricating, they show up to site and they find that those beams that they have fabricated that took them weeks to get to site are not fitting, then you have a big problem, because now all of that material needs to go back, be redesigned, re-engineered, refitted, and then who's going to pay for all of that? You're talking now probably a lot of money, right? In the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So one miss like that, and it's going to cost everybody a lot of trouble, a lot of headache. And it's not just the money, it's how much delay now you're adding. It's a snowball effect, right? It's one thing after the other, and then you have a huge problem. So if you think, instead of how much is this going to cost me, how much value we're bringing. So we caught that early on. And then I always reminded those senior supers and those project managers on that job, think about it. If we wouldn't have caught this early on, where would you be? This would be in deep trouble. And we avoided all of that. how do you put a price to a problem that never happened? And so that kind of changes the mentality a little bit. And that's something that I hope we can all embrace as part of the vocabulary when we speak about that, right? It's not just, the 3D model. I know it has a visual impact, right? And like I like to say, it's an X factor. It's like, oh man, this is impressive. And it looks impressive, and it is impressive, but it needs to drive value.
Thank you. Yeah, that's excellent. I think there'll be a lot of people who are there who are thinking, okay, well, I have an experience in maybe construction. I have an experience in CAD, like I'm a CAD technician.
Yeah.
What opportunities in terms of the roles and responsibility are emerging as a result of the BIM technology that are now being implemented?
That's a great question. So one question I get asked a lot is, I have, for example, right, a person came after one webinar like this to me in person and said, I have 20 years of experience using CAD. I'm very good with that, but I never really had the opportunity to learn BIM, learn Revit or ArchiCAD, any BIM software. What do I do? Where do I start? And so I wanted to really try to give some ideas on how to guide that path. And my suggestion, the one that worked for many people that I have advised was, you don't need to re-study everything from square one. A lot of what you already know, you can transfer. I mean, if you have 20 something years of experience in CAD, or 10 or 5 or whatever, that is valuable. And a lot of that knowledge you will be able to transfer, but you need to take the right steps. So that doesn't mean that you're going to have to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in going back to college necessarily. But you can do is there are short programs, 3-month college level programs that you can take specifically for the software that are going to be fairly inexpensive. We're talking, a few $100s here and there, something that you can complete on weekends or at, after hours. And they're really going to help you bridge all of that knowledge into something new. There are short programs, again, a few months worth of an investment after hours, not a big money down for it, that can help you transfer your knowledge into something new and take all of that knowledge and really make it evolve, right? So don't ever think, oh man, all of that I know from before is useless, because it's not. You can really look into doing that and transferring all that education and knowledge.
What would be the typical job titles?
Job titles, so a lot of things are going to be regarding project coordination. There are specific BIM coordinator roles, for example, that I know a lot of people in my company work under those titles. Project coordinator, BIM technologist, as an entry level, right? Can definitely be part of that. It doesn't necessarily need to be tied up to BIM. That's one thing that I always like to address, like, because some people will come and say, well, I'm a field person. I'm not a technical. I'm not on a computer. I don't want to be in front of a computer, 8 hours a day. I want to be on site, and that's absolutely wonderful. And what you need to then identify is, what skills do I need to bring to my own experience to be that? Meaning, if I want to be a successful superintendent on site or a project coordinator on site, because that's what I love doing, how can I learn to use these tools for site applications? How can I learn to do an effective clash detection? And there are many, and even today in the middle of this pandemic, there are so many courses online, very inexpensive, that will address just that. And you can bring all of your knowledge and experience, put it in that. And I know site superintendents that are very well versed in BIM. They don't do it directly themselves, but they understand what it's about, so they can coordinate with the technical people. There's also, like, in terms of roles, the project coordinator types, the project management, the BIM coordinators. Those are roles that I would for sure look into. I think you're muted.
So I have some question here that I think it's some question that I'll have to answer myself,
Okay.
which talks about what advice would you give to a buyer who has no previous construction experience but is interested in getting into the construction supply chain stream? So this why I say this might be a question I answer is because it's a supply chain stream. There are different ways you can go about. The one we have always advised people to go about job search, especially if you do not have experience in construction, is what I hear, and you want to go into that area. Of course, in this type of case, supply chain actually, the skills that we have or that we've acquired in supply chain is transferable. That's one great leverage we have in supply chain. If you're negotiating in maybe oil and gas, it's still the same negotiation skills you're going to need in construction. If you're into contracts management in supply chain, it's still the same skills. So I don't really think there is any barrier to you crossing into construction in supply chain if you do have those same skill set already from other industry. That'll be my direct answer to that. There is another one here that talks about I've been trying to tailor my skills on my resume to those of the job description. I've been trying to do so for some time now. Yeah, well, you're talking to the guru here when it comes to targeting your resume. So there's a tool actually called JobScan. Specifically, it does that. That's like an ATS that you can use to simulate, how well your resume matches the job description. But in all cases, this is a software, so it's garbage in, garbage out. If you put in garbage, you get that regardless of how well you match the job description. So what I would advise you to do, and I think Pierre, you actually spoke to this in the beginning. You did say that when you're writing a resume, write it in such a way that it answers some questions that the employer asks. Maybe the question may be particular regarding some specific problems they are trying to solve. That's why they are hiring anyways. So try to identify those things in the job description and write your resume to respond directly to those particular requirements that they have on the job posting. That is the best way to write a resume. But of course, you do have these other tools there to support you. JobScan is a good example of that. But in case you still have some questions regarding that, you can reach out to me. I'll be able to provide more information regarding that. Okay, so that's that. I think the other question I have here for you, Pierre, it has to do with integration capability in BIM, but specifically in this case, how does it provide solutions for managing occupancy flow or disruptions for occupied buildings? So this will be in the facility management segment.
Yes. To your questions, the answer is yes, but very similarly to the question about sustainability, a very, very new side of BIM. And it just makes sense because I always say, FM for BIM is just the natural progression, right? You develop these models, you put them together, you run all these processes, class detection, coordination, simulations, and all of that. And then, the building is built, and what do you do? So there are many tools available, but they're very much in their infancy. So a very interesting area to explore. I can point you out in one website that I liked about it called YOU-BIM. You, like YOU BIM. It's an interesting solution that gives you some ideas on how to bridge a existing model onto FM. But yes, almost uncharted territory, very quickly growing. So if you're a facilities manager or looking into that type of work, I would highly recommend getting, some knowledge and some research onto how BIM gets into that equation and how can you bridge the models coming from the GC and the consultants onto the facility managers. It's a really good opportunity.
Oh, great. That's, I think that to also add to that, you said earlier that, this BIM is like an emerging, do I
Very much.
say, industry niche, basically.
Yes, very much.
And it presents a lot of opportunity for anyone who is actually looking to specialize in these areas.
Yeah.
And the way I'm seeing it is that a lot of people who are curious enough to really go into BIM, to dive deep into it, they will be
Yeah,
the first in a lot of things, that are just emerging right now. And this is the
absolutely.
reason why I see this as a very great opportunity for anyone who is looking into these things.
Yeah.
Great. So I think one other area that I wanted to ask you about is with small businesses. As
Hmm.
you know that even in construction industry, a lot of the companies that exist in the construction industry are small businesses.
Hmm.
Well, to implement BIM might make sense for big companies like LECO, like
Yeah.
all of that. But for a small company, what are the solution? What are the kind of things that are available for them to still be able to, use BIM technology?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's that one that really resonates with me because that was one of the things I identified early in my career as one roadblock. I always thought, these software implementations are expensive. And for an entrepreneur, a small, practice, say, for example, you get together with a couple of friends that you trust and you start putting together a design firm or an engineering firm, getting access to it can be difficult. The good thing about it is that more and more the industry from the software side has reacted to that. And so now they have very different pricing structures based on use per month. So before you would have to buy licenses for the full year, even if you were not going to use them heavily. So it was a high risk. Nowadays, you can go on a subscription base and only pay for what you use, which is a much more suitable solution for small entrepreneurs and small firms. And more specifically, I always say, if you're thinking in that direction, which is wonderful, get acquainted and well versed with Revit. Revit right now is the software that kind of drives the majority of applications. And from Revit, the interconnection with everything else BIM related is always present. So if you want to take a Revit model and push it onto a clash detection, you can do that. If you can do quantity takeoff directly in Revit or push that model onto a different platform for that, you can also do that. So it's very versatile and it's not heavily expensive. So it's something to consider for sure. You're muted again, sorry. Nope, sorry, I can't hear you, Abiodun. I think you're still muted.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. Yeah.
So what are all the tools readily available in BIM?
Yeah, similarly, there's many tools. It really depends on what you want to do. But if you want to get started with it, I always recommend getting into Revit. The amount of training that you can find, even for free, on YouTube is just incredible. I always recommend getting into a program if you're serious about it, and then you can always use that as a supplement, the online training as a supplement to that. But there are many good, college level educational places and training centers where you can go, and within a few short months, you can be very well exposed to BIM. So I will always say start with Revit. You're muted again. Sorry. I can see you. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, I don't know
There
what
you
is
are.
going on here with this thing. So
My
I have
bad.
a question about implementation.
Hmm.
You have been involved with the implementation, I believe so. So
Yes.
what would you think are the cost implication, first of all, and then what are the key success factors for a successful implementation?
Yeah, that's a good question. And a lot of firms will be looking for workers that will help them with the implementation. One of my first roles when I joined an architectural firm was help us bring BIM into here because we have very few people that actually know BIM, and if you're good at it, it will really help us. The cost implication, I similar to what I mentioned not too long ago. I always like to approach that question from the standpoint of value. You know, the industry is looking for more and more BIM, right? So as a validation point with say your employer, say you go to a place and they ask you, oh, you know what, help us bring BIM into this company, help us lead that effort. You always need to approach it from the standpoint of value, right? This is what the industry wants, this is what builders want, this is what owners want, more importantly, and they're expecting this. So cost implications are going to be, again, subscription based to make it cost effective, and understanding that pricing structure, reaching out to vendors. Usually, it's just one email away or one phone call away, setting up some meetings to get them to explain the more uh, I guess feasible solutions for the size of company or what you have in mind. They'll be able to guide you through that and make an informed decision on that. But usually implementation is a setting setting yourself and the rest of your coworkers and team for success through technology. And that is, to me, the clear message to everybody. We're embracing something new, we're bringing something new that will add value, and we are going to have to learn together, right? Because if it's otherwise, um, from my experience too, it's very easy to get into this silos, right? Where you are isolated and you're, oh, well, you're the BIM guys, you're the CAD guys, and you're, the old experience versus the new, and it doesn't work. It always has to be embraced as a company-wide initiative, and that's what really better serves. And when you're proposing this, always good to I remember when I first brought a lot of that into a company, I will always like to approach it because there's a lot of uncertainty and fear about change and new things. So I'll always like to approach it from the standpoint of, we're not looking to replace you. A lot of people will jump into, oh no, here comes the youngsters with their computers, I'm going to be out of work. I'm gonna fight them out of here, right? And it's
Yeah,
always good to go to them and say, we need you, we need your experience, we need your expertise, and you
yeah,
can also learn this too and be part of this.
yeah. Great, great. Yeah, I like that answer there, especially with the cultural issues, change management.
Yeah,
Just like pretty much every other project for that matter, you need to socialize whatever you're trying to achieve. Or otherwise, there will be some people who are already, trying to see how they can derail anything you.
yeah. Hey, you bet, there's a lot of that too. Yeah,
you know, it's always a thing. But I really appreciate all of the knowledge and the value you've provided. And we're so much grateful for having that opportunity to go over this with you. We thank you so much. And we'll be keeping in touch. We'll be monitoring to see what is going on in the BIM world. We have this great opportunity to have a chat with you. Who knows what comes your way pretty soon. So we'll be looking forward to, I'll especially keep in touch, and I'll also let the other guys who are dialed in to reach out to Pierre on LinkedIn, connect with
Yeah,
him. I mean, this
add
this
me
is
on
the
LinkedIn. Yeah,
yeah, this is the whole point. This is about networking. It's about having this conversation and starting a new relationships. So
absolutely.
that's the way it works for me. And I really appreciate all the knowledge and the information you share with us today. And all the other guys, I hope we've been able to do justice to this pretty much. And we've answered all the questions. I hope you guys will have a great weekend coming soon, hopefully. Uh, and you have a great day. Thank you guys for
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to yeah, to continue on and yeah, have these interactions.
okay. Sounds good. Thanks so much, Pierre. Thanks everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay.